Well then, hello everybody, did this make it better? And well, I I have no excuse. I'm very sorry for the long wait. I basically I do have a problem about what I'm doing, and I'm not planning on fixing it. And that problem is I'm watching a bunch of new to me. They've been out way longer than I am. What if channels that I had never seen, and most of it I really like. So I started to binge watch all of their videos, and I really do like them. Even most of them are Naruto stuff, so they're a lot more. And they're some of them are actually finished, which is surprising to me since most of the videos I have seen weren't finished at all. And what else? Let me see. I during that time I also am planning on something, but I'm not sure if I should do it though. And I will tell you about it sooner or later. Maybe later, but I'm not sure. Huh. Anything else before I start? Also, how do you guys like the new logo? Um, I technically made it, technically not. I had someone else make it for me, and I used their picture. And I do really like it. What do you guys think? Please comment down below. If you don't, then I'll just assume that you like it and I'll leave it like this. Until next time. I'm starting to get a little more serious about my life and this channel. So I don't know how far I can go. And also, before I go any further, I'll have to say this for sure. I do have a problem with keeping things together. At the first few months, at max, I'm very into it, like this channel. And after a few days, I'll usually drop it, like most of my other hobbies. But strangely, this thing lasted a whole year, and I'm still not tired of it. Yet, I'm starting to feel tired of it. So that's why I'm gonna be like so much further back on the weeks. But that's just being a human for me. I guess I'm not technically a human anyway. Alright then. I think that's enough, and let me get into a serious mode. Now, actually starting it. This is What If Deku Was a Mutant, Part 14. 18 plus. Here we go. After the class watched the television on what has happened, we're moving back a few minutes before. Zuko's in the car, well, in the bus with All Might and a few officers. Zuko's just holding out his hand and just pretending to hold something. To him, he's holding his memories of all the things that has happened to the point he is now, and just hope that she's still okay. Everybody else around him thinks that he's nervous and try to comfort him. But Zuko, after he closed his hands and put it into his chest, he gets serious with a cold look and said, "I'm ready." All Might looks over to this kid and remembering a few days ago on how Nezu told him that Zuko's going to be part of the raid. And All Might was against it since he was a child, but he was surprised to see that Zuko had a license, a hero license, once that was almost 2 years of it. And then more surprised that Zuko sacrificed that very card, to save her, to save and make sure she's safe. So he just got a little bit more respect from All Might too. All Might looks over to Zuko and asks him if he's okay sacrificing your license for this very raid. you might not be able to go back to and get it. And Zuko looks over to him with a very serious look and said, anything for her. Which the officers thinks young love, but also thinks this might be too much for a kid like him. But anyway, they everything sets up. The officers all are surrounded to this one area, and All Might tells Zuko, when you have the chance, rush towards them and knock down each and every one of them. I know you're fast, so do this. And Zuko, of course, nods and zip up his suit, especially his mask. He got one of his tails ready, but it's almost armored-like, not tail-like. And All Might knocks. Everybody's whispered and talks until All Might breaks through the wall, telling everybody to get down. And Zuko rushed past All Might with his stupid speech and knocks down any of and all people that's in there. And there's only 4 people: Shiraki, Dabi, Toga, and a man in all white. After Zuko knocks them all down, he looks over and finds a room, finds a door. All Might said to search the whole area. We need to find her now. Zuko, not taking a chance, breaks through the door and he sees Momo on the table with an IV on the side. She's breathing slowly. And her stomach, and he walks over to her slowly, just slowly, and sees that she has stitches on her stomach. Zuko, fearing the worst, asks they try to wake up Momo, but she doesn't wake up after multiple attempts. Zuko, of course, pulled all the IVs and wires that was connected to her and take her outside. After All Might sees what has happened, tried to tell everybody, all the officers, to take the villains. But at that moment, the villains were being taken up by some goop and teleported away. All Might was distressed, and then he heard All for One's voice, and he immediately destroyed the building, and Zuko's already gone, rushing over to the voice until he finally finds the one and only All for One. All for One and All Might look at each other, took a stance, and start fighting at each other. Moving over to Zuko. Zuko looks over on Momo's side and asking the person if anything is wrong with her. And this person has a quirk to check throughout her whole vitals, her body, to see if she is actually injured internally. Internal bleeding, which just doesn't show anything. But he does say that there is something off about this one part of her body. And the doctor opens it right there. And when Zuko tries to go and just touch her, she flinches awake after the first incision of the cut. And she's freaking out, kind of scared and shaking throughout the whole time until she sees Zuko. And she only was able to say that you came. That you came. And she's starting to cry. And tears of joy, but also shaking on her side and saying that she feels sick. They and she's starting to cry even more, tears going down her cheeks, down to her chin, and keep flowing down like a river. Zuko grabbed onto her and giving her a hug, and also tells her that she's okay. I got you. You're not gonna get hurt anymore. And then she says something that Zuko was not prepared for. And she says in a very shaky voice into his ear, soft spoken where no one else can hear, but they can see how mad Zuko's getting. And she says, and and he, the man with a white cloak and glasses, a beard or a mustache, he said he'll make me like it's like you. And she finally went back to sleep after getting ejected by a needle from the doctor for her to finally calm down after her heart rate was going way too high. Zuko, after hearing all this and seeing her go limp, he held her tightly until he noticed that the doctor told him that she's going to be sedated for a moment of time until she's taken safely to a hospital. Zuko thanks him greatly, but he turns around and sees the people are gone. See, the villains are gone. But he have his memories rush back. The time with his parents. The time that he had to sacrifice just to survive. And then the one doctor that got away. The one that did it all and started it all. And this angers Zuko gravely. He hears voices in his head over and over again. And he's just going over, running, flying as fast as he can from his area to All Might. All Might took about 5 seconds at the very least to get to that area. Zuko took 10 seconds to get there. And he sees All Might and One for All fighting against each other, going out and blow by blow, shockwave by shockwave, knocking down each and every building. Zuko, he's shaken of rage, but he knows one thing for sure. To go all out, he needs to make sure everybody, all the civilians, are out and safe. And at this time, the helicopter up the top is watching everything and videotaping and putting it on live for everybody to see. Zuko goes over, pulls out his wings and fly over to a couple, pulls out his tail and pull them out of the crumbling house and take them out to the road for the cops. And he kept doing this before he finished with the last one. But after he finished, he sees something else. All for One is pulling out a tail. Not any tail, but a red blood liquid tail that is enraging Zuko. And he knows only one doctor that has this knowledge. And All Might is yelling at this All for One where he got that new power. And why are you so strong? You must be weak, and I killed you. And everybody's in shock on hearing that. But All for One is laughing at All Might and saying, my doctor is such a brave man, sacrificing a child's power to give me this very gift. You might know him as this certain name. And that certain name Zuko remembers. Zuko is holding up as much anger as he can, remembering all the training that Nezu told him to keep it in and not show. And All Might is shocked that a doctor would do such a thing for All for One. And then when they were about to lean forward and do another battle, Zuko immediately come in between them both. All Might. Sorry, it's getting too much. All Might tells the kid to run away. You're not strong enough, and you need to get away from here. I need to beat him. I need to do this myself. Zuko looks over to All Might, and immediately All Might shuts the fuck up. Zuko looks over to All for One and asks the man, so, the man you are speaking of, does he have a beard? Does he have a cloak? Does he have glasses? And All for One said, yes, he does. He's a very famous doctor that's known for this other name. Zuko cracks his knuckles. Both of them. Like in Ghoul. One with each and every finger cracked with his thumb. And Zuko takes off his mask and shows almost rage in his eyes, but a full smile across his face. He said, "Will you please give him a message for me?" As All for One said, "Sure. Since you're not gonna live this long, I assume that you might be a great fan of him." And Zuko said, "Yes, I am. Tell him he made a grave mistake." Zuko released his anger in a way that he started to yell, scream that I'm gonna kill you. And in this rage, his wings first come out, fully out and spread as far as All for One's arm is, with all of his quirks is like on both sides. And then they starting to get red and hot, very hot, to a point where it's starting to melt off his own wings, dripping to the floor and sizzling. All Might steps further back since it's so hot. And then Zuko, well, All Might's surprise and Zuko's anger keeps screaming out for more and hotter and hotter, to a point where they're starting to turn bluish. But they are starting to turn even worse. The blood in his body is making them purple, pinkish. And then he sprout out tails as well as his wing. Something that he's been training years to do, to perfect, but never capable of doing such a thing, since it cost him great pain just to do it. And by this moment, it's shown on the TV of this very picture, Zuko screaming in death in such a way that it just feels like pain is going all over his body. Even everybody in the world that's watching this just feels the pain off of this guy. And in his classroom, seeing this very video, thinks, this man is dead. Zuko flash out of nothing, disappear, and then reappear right in front of All for One, smacking him with one of his tails right across All for One's chest, making a deep, deep wound across his chest, pushing him back. All for One, of course, regenerates because his gift is the mutant powers. Zuko sees him and starts to laugh and scream and laugh and scream even more, until it shows that his tails, his wings, are starting to form a hardened crust around them, to a point where Zuko's tails now whipping around all the areas around him, making huge indents, craters all over, and Zuko's wings starting to get way more bigger than it was, but they're spreading out for his next attack, like in hawks, throwing out his wings, feathers, over to All for One and stabbing 10 or 20 into his body as the others are all over the road and the buildings. And Zuko is going heavily on this battle against All For One. All For One is doing all he can with the very gift of, well, the mutant power of regeneration. He is growing back most of his body parts, but the others, the quirks, are not keeping up. All of his other quirks, the All Might destroy, destroying, yes, destroying arm is not hitting Zuko. He's missing every single time. And when Zuko finally stopped and, well, stopped, because all of this is actually hurting him a lot, to a point where he can feel every single body part burning, but he doesn't care. But he's still, his body is trying to stop him for it can heal. But at that moment, All For One threw a huge blast at Zuko, which pushed Zuko back into a building, into another building, into another, hitting a wall, and it's completely collapsed into him. Everybody thinks that he's dead. Even All Might is enraged. But when All Might was about to attack, Zuko comes out of the rubble in full body armor and then reappears with his wings unraveling of his armor, turning back into wings, turning back into those tails, into an armor-like substance. And Zuko rushed back over to All For One, keep fighting and beating him down over and over again. He knows that he has a limit, so All For One will have a limit for a weaker one. As it kept on going and going, almost an hour has passed and none of them are lining up. The dust that kept going up and down spreads around just to see what's going on. Zuko finally backs away, breathing heavily because all of his wounds are starting to show now, much deeper and much more worse than he originally thought. He's covering one of his arms for stopping the bleeding, just to force it closed for it to heal properly. And as he's breathing heavily, All For One is laughing and laughing over and over again and saying, "Yes! This is the battle I wanted. This power. This is the perfect weapon for the world." As he gets back up, seemingly not caring about the wounds that are not healing as fast as he likes. He looks at his body and pulls off the shirt, and it shows the veins that are popping out of his arm all over from his shoulder to his chest, almost to his other body parts, just to hold up that massive quirk arm. And All For One saying, "And this is not my final form. Let me show you what I can really do." As he pulled out his right arm again, and this time his tails, and wrap it around his arm, making it a huge, massive, muscular arm alike, but also covered in black and red veins. And Zuko is starting to saying, "Fuck it." And he does the same thing to himself, fully covering his body in armor, tails, and his wings out, all at the same time. Mind you, he is shaking in pain and in anger at the same time, knowing how much that Momo must have gone through just to get that one thing. He's hoping for the best that she is not going to go through this same thing. And after this, it shows this itself, the picture. But everything is made by him. The face mask is not there. Zuko is showing no emotion. All For One throws a huge blast, way stronger than any others Even for All Might, that was a very strong hit. And when the dust finally settles, it shows that Zuko took the whole brunt of the force and held it in place, broke it in half, and then tried to rip it off of All Might's arm. He finally did one piece, the fist. All for One screamed a bit and then cover it up with his arm. Well, cover it up with his tail of that missing piece, since he can't regrow it right now. Zuko throws out a few tail whips at All for One, only at his head the whole time, trying to kill him off directly into his neck. But All for One kept dodging out of the way, barely missing or missing at the whole time by this battle. And Zuko is getting very tired, to a point where his tails are starting to get thinner and thinner as his wings are getting bigger and bigger, to a point where they're impossible to see. Only a strand of thread, that thin, is coming through the air, and it's making a huge through every single time. The only way they can tell is by the wind pressure and Zuko's moving of his body, of sweeping like he has always been doing. And it's cutting through deeply. Even the slight misses, they're cutting through very swift, like a knife in the warm butter. All for One starting to, well, of course, feel more pain because this is too much power to take, especially that one, move. So he gathered up as much power as he can with all of his quirks activated, and his body is starting to turn red, like Zuko at the beginning, and threw out a huge blast at Zuko again. And this blast, Zuko, of course, spread out his wings, covered them in armor, and took in the brunt of that force, knowing it was way stronger than before. And he's flying back, almost all the way back to All Might. All the way back to All Might. All Might asked the kid if he's okay, and to ask the kid that I have a final move too, and I'm planning to use it all for this fight. And Zuko looks over to All Might and tells him, "Don't. I got it." And when all the dust finally settles, and it shows that All for One threw his arm out forward, and when they look over to Zuko's holding something. And when Zuko finally opened up his wings, it shows another piece of his arm. All for One is starting to grab onto his whatever is remaining of his arm back down, finally going back to the original length. After that, All Might is starting to think that this kid is way stronger than he is, or anybody around the world. And Zuko rushed towards All for One. By this moment, it's going so fast, he knows one rule: to not show his true power. And this whole time, he did not show how strong he really can be. But he decided to throw that all away just for this moment. Zuko rushed over to All for One and kept pounding him down and furthermore, until he see a glance of a bright light. And Zuko can't believe he's gonna do such a thing. He went around All for One, pulling on every single body part, his legs apart, his arms ripping off of his body, and All for One is finally screaming in pain of all of this trauma. And Zuko is holding him up by his neck, and he's behind All for One. And then everybody's seeing this in horror, but happiness that he is finally gonna defeat it. And Zuko said to his ear, and loud enough for everybody to hear, "But you're gonna be... I took you down. Remember this. A kid took you down." But as he showed the head over to All Might, as All Might is throwing a huge punch to All for One's face, but he will kill you. And by that moment, All for One connects with One for All's power, all of it that he has remained, into that one blow, shattering, breaking, but not killing. All Might is standing there, tired but showing his weak form, panting heavily, very tired. But Zuko is holding down All for One's face, covering it up to make sure that he doesn't say anything, covering up the rest of the body since it's such a disgusting picture that he does not want anybody else to see. But he wraps it around with his tails to make sure he stays there. Zuko, of course, tells everybody to turn off their TVs. But All Might says, hold on, I need to do one more thing. I'm very grateful on your help, especially for this villain. Would you please help me make this world of a peacer and safe? And Zuko said, I had to think about it. Can we please, as he's holding to his head, I need more. All Might, of course, worry for him and tells everybody to finally turn it off because his speech is not gonna start there. Zuko, of course, feeling very tired, and when he finally retracts all of his tails, all of his wings, and his armor, it shows throughout his body. By this point, he only has shorts on. Everything else has disappeared, gone, and it shows throughout his body scars and wounds, and as well as burns, second to third degree burns all over his body, and it shows all over, and everybody is gasping and terrified on how much his quirk actually affected him so far that he needs to use it. And the TV did not turn off, it turned off the audio, but it shows the very last picture of how much Zuko has gotten endured suffered just for this fight, and he finally passed out after all of that. The TV turned off, and the classroom is just shocked to see that. Few hours pass. Izuku is finally awakened, and he looks over to his left and then to his right, and he sees Recovery Girl. Recovery Girl tells him to not get up as he's getting up, and he says, do you have it? Do you have it? And Recovery Girl said, yes, of course I do. He tells all the doctors to go back outside. She needs to do this. And Recovery Girl opened up her bag. Everybody assumed that was specialty equipment to take care of Zuko, but really, it was human flesh that she got from everybody that was sacrificed that knows Zuko's secret. And these people, they have nothing to live for, so they want something, anything, to help a true future hero, even how bad or how villainish, how evil his quirk might work. Zuko, of course, thanks to the people that gave him this meal, and it's a huge 2-pound steak mixed with other people's body parts, bones, everything, and he eats it all up raw. After finally eating it all, Recovery Girl gives him a bottle, and this bottle holds blood, actual human blood from the quirkless, since they're more useful and more pure than a quirk person. After Zuko finally devoured the whole thing, his body's starting to show the redness turning pink, turning back to his skin color, and the scars are reconnecting, growing into their original place. Zuko, of course, leans back and just feels how his body is starting to heal, like they always do. After the very last one, where the last cut on his lips start to reform. Zuko, of course, stays there for a bit until Recover Girl tells him to get back up. For all the times that he got hurt just as bad in practice, with Nezu, he knows that not to disobey Recover Girl. Not because she will hurt him, just because he treats her as his mother. And he does not say Recover Girl, he says her actual name, or Grandma, or Ma, depending on the situation. Recover Girl, it's been a while since she was heard to be called Mother, knows that Zuko really is in pain. After he gets back up after a few hours, asks Recover Girl where is she. And Zuko didn't have to wait, since Recover Girl knows, and told him that she's over in the next room. And Zuko, of course, goes over, and he's being taken to that room with Recover Girl and a few doctors. And Zuko asks more questions, especially that one piece. And he's really praying that it's not what he thinks. He's very much praying and pleading to the doctors to Recover Girl it's not what he thinks. Recover Girl is not answering, and the doctors are not. They just tell him to wait and see. He goes into her room, and she's looking out in the window. Sitting up, not out of bed, but still in the bed, covered in wounds and bandages that she doesn't need. Zuko looks over to her and speaks out in a soft tone when he was right next to her bed. She feels his warmth of his hand. She looks down to see his hand, almost making sure that she doesn't disappear this time, with both of his hands. And Zuko asks her, what happened? And Zuko's surprise and Momo's sad pain. She looks up with one eye completely white, like she always have, and her other eye red, black and red, showing Zuko's fear came true. After the doctors leave, and the Recover Girl, of course, tells them to have all the time they can have, we'll go over and recover All Might. She closes the door and makes a sound that is locked, for no one to get through. Zuko, of course, kept staring at her with her eye, and Zuko just can't help but he rushed into a huge hug, tightening, almost squeezing her to a point where she can't breathe, and she was about to let go and push him away, but she just hears him crying. He's actually crying. And I'm so sorry, he says. I'm so sorry. I could have. I'm so sorry. He can't say anything else. He just doesn't know what else to say. So he just keeps squeezing her tightly and just talking to her, saying that I'm so sorry. And Momo sadly, she had to be the brave one for once. Said it's okay into his ear. It's not your fault. As she kind of taps him on the shoulder and tells him, "Can you let go? I can't breathe." Zuko, of course, lets go, and she's breathing a little heavier. And Zuko said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm uh, I'm 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 sorry." And Momo keeps saying that he's okay. He didn't do anything wrong. It was that man, and they're both stuttering and shaking at the same time. And Zuko breathe in and breathe out. And Momo did the same thing at the same time. After they finally calm down, look at each other, and kind of chuckle that they did at the same time, Zuko said, "Okay." He moved his hands into his hair and pulled them back forward, breathing heavy one more time, and then put his hands together. I said, "Okay. If you're ready, please tell me what happened. I'll promise not to go crazy again." And Momo, having her strength reappear and seeing how focused and strong, brave, everything she loved about Zuko comes in one single sentence, she can't just help but be grateful that she is the only one he's looking at. So, with all of her courage, she explained what happened. The day that she was captured, and the day that she was tortured by Toga. And Zuko, of course, clutched not the bed, but the barbs that was right next to the bed, and it's showing that it's moving into the shape of his fist. Momo keeps saying that she tortured her, keep cutting her up and taking a few pints of blood every single day. And then the doctor came in, saying that he'll make her perfect, become the next perfect project. The other one was a failure, and he will never obey. But you will be the perfect prodigy project, everything, especially becoming my new Nomu. But after that, she couldn't remember anything. Bits and parts of the doctor coming back with a mask all white and a knife cutting her open. And she saw a lung, an actual lung, a half of a very lung, and put into her body. And when the doctor was done and he left, he almost also said this as he was leaving, saying, "Be prepared for your new power, as this is one of many." And then she feels off. And she says this all, and then she saw the door open in a huge shatter of motion, seeing nothing but white, and seeing Zuko eyes. She closed her eyes and remembers the moment that she explained what has happened, and then that's it. Zuko, of course, is holding on the barb still, but Zuko is not saying anything, and Momo thinks that he might actually abandon her. She's thinking that he will call her a monster, or even worse, just trash. And she looks over and she sees Zuko's just a small part of his face, and it's full of tears falling off. Zuko looks over to her with tears coming off of his corner of his eyes, on both of them falling into his chin, into the floor, and saying, I'm so sorry. This doctor, and he say something very specific on how many freckles this doctor had on one side of his face and the other side. Momo, of course, being in fear, saying, yeah, he had the same thing. And Suka said, he stands up, goes over to a wall, punch it just an inch away, but the air pressure from that very wall, that very punch, made an indent into the wall. Zuko, of course, moves back, saying, sorry, I need to get that out of me. Did you know the doctor's name? Momo said, no, she never got it. And Zuko said, the doctor's name was this. He was also known for this. And Momo was curious and asked, how does he know about this guy? And Zuko said, he closed his eyes because he doesn't want to look at her face at this moment. He put his one hand on the back of his head and saying, he was the one that took my family and me and did experiments on my body to a point where I grew these. As he pulled out his wings and his armor. The tail was the only thing that was his originally. And Zuko by this moment explained about his backstory. As he took breaks and asked for the doctor for some food, as Momo, of course, just sit there and took in everything. The shock, the fear, the pain, and the worst of all, the sadness of, and then realizing that how much pain he has gone through in his childhood just to survive. And what really made her feel sick to her stomach, just for him to survive all of this, he had to eat his own parents. And she can't help but to cry as well. And Zuko, of course, this is the first time ever telling the story again after all these years, can't help but to cry into her shoulders, as she did the same to his. After all of this, a whole day of speaking to each other, and Zuko opened up his backstory, his true backstory. He has talked about his life and goals, but he never talked about himself. And she was so curious in the first dates about his family and about his life as he was a child. And all she can think is, what do we do from here? As the scene slowly dimmed into darkness, all black, we see in another scene, another day of another week, showing Momo talking to her parents and trying to convince them to not get her out of UA, especially since she's really cares and wants to stay with Zuko. And they did not see what has happened. And when they were surprised to hear what he has done to the villain that took her away, at first they were terrified, and then comforted that the recovery girl, the very hero that saved millions of people with her quirk, basically tells them that he is a very good kid and he will never hurt anyone unless they gave him a reason. And well, they can't go against Recovery Girl being so family known. And when they went over to All Might and asked him what he thinks of Zuko, he says the same thing. He sees true potential and probably the next number one hero when he graduates. And when they finally looks over to Momo and seeing her, well, not happy, but also not scared. And when Zuko finally comes in after they have been in there for a bit longer, almost 3 hours, her whole spirit, body, and her face finally smile when she looks over to Zuko. Zuko, of course, reach for her hand and just hold it tightly. Momo does not care. She just hold it just as tight to her as she did to him. And they can't help but see that how in love that these two kids are. And well, Momo's father said, you know, I'll never expect, and he says this out loud, I never expected to say this to my daughter's boyfriend, but I approve. And I'm waiting for the day that you propose. Zuko, well, he doesn't say anything. Momo, just embarrassed, and kind of throw a pillow at her father because she's finally healed up. And, well, kind of screamed Dad, very embarrassed about this moment. As her mother kind of chuckles and saying, now, sweetie, we both knew that this was about to happen. After that, they leave, and Zuko just asks her, what now? She says she's going to be staying in the hospital for another 2 days to check on her quirk and see if it's okay. The doctor said that she will get a new power, but she doesn't understand what. A few minutes pass, and the doctor came in with a very worried look. She looks over to, it's a female doctor, looks over to a Momo and asks for the guy to leave. This is a very serious problem. But Zuko was about to leave until Momo grabs onto his hand and just tells him to stay. Which the doctor, of course, would not go against her patients. And then tells them to stay quiet until she finishes. She says that she does have a new power. And it's seemingly weak, but also shows that it's very damaging to her body. Not sure how it will affect her quirk itself, but with good practice and almost expert teachers, you might become a hero again. The doctor leaves, and also as she was leaving, she also said, just think of your new power as a tail, and it should appear. And Momo gets curious, but Zuko knows what's coming next. And she just thinks of the tail, and it comes out as a tail, but not as any color that she's seen. And Zuko's surprise, it's not a color that he's used to. And it's a blue-ish, two tails connecting to each other, but only separating for about a foot away. And it's cold, very cold. Momo's kind of like wagging it and learning to, of course, move it, but when she pull it back where it doesn't appear again, her whole back feels cold, shivering, and when she touches it, it's freezing cold. And she can't take that. It's so. She says this. It's so cold. So, and she's shivering. Zuko, of course, grabbed onto her and released his heat from his wings, just slowly heating them up to a point where she's comfortable. And after this, it says, I didn't know you can copy my quirk too. I'm kind of jealous. And of course, Momo kind of chuckles, but still shivering. And that is where I'm gonna end it. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. And the next video will have to come up sooner. Alright then. Bye.